That Supreme Being, I invite you to do so. As our faces are different, so are our beliefs and traditions. Let us put ourselves in an atmosphere of peace and positive expectation as we seek guidance for a successful consultation. We are thankful for this day and for every member of this gathering who have come to share and to receive. In our daily existence, whether at work or outside of the home, we enjoy the mystery and beauty of the present, as well as the signs of our past, some of which are also mystery and beauty. We do not fully understand their purpose. We gather here this evening seeking to consider the past and gain guidance for the present and the future. O great Creator God of the universe, to some of us you are known as Jesus the Christ. To others who are from the Sanatanist tradition, you are known as Brahma and its different manifestation. To those of the Orisha, Olodumare, and so many other names. You are the great I am that I am, the great Jehovah. You are the beginning and the ending, and who can take different forms and different ways of interacting with us. Be present with us at this time. Be with us as we respectfully discuss the topics which each other bring from their minds to this discussion. And may the guardian spirits, those of the east, those of the west, and those of the north, those of the south, bear witness to our prayer. Ehe, ehe, ehe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and you can take your seats. So we say greetings to those now arriving, greetings to those who are here. There's a great deal of space closer to the committee, so there'll be less walking when you're going to be making your contributions. But distinguished ladies and gentlemen, stakeholders, key interest groups to this consultation of the Cabinet-appointed committee to review the placement of statues, monuments, and signage in Trinidad and Tobago, thank you so much for being here. My name is D.K. Ronsner. It's a pleasure welcoming you once more to the consultation, whether you are here physically or you are looking at the live broadcast, and you have the opportunity to contribute physically as well as remotely to the discussion. We're thanking Chief once again for setting the mood and talking about operating from a level of respect. And before that, though, let me introduce you to the members of the committee. Now, committee chair is Dr. Rita Pemberton, renowned historian, author, lecturer, former head of the Department of History at the UWI St. Augustine campus, and former chairman of COSTAT. Mr. Lawrence R. June, CEO of the Heroes Foundation, noted sustainable development professional and youth development advocate. Chief Ricardo Barrett Hernandez, chief of the Santa Rosa First People Community in Trinidad and Tobago, former deputy mayor of Arima and local government councillor. Ms. Annaline Innes, deputy permanent secretary, Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, attorney at law. Dr. Eastland Kate McKenzie, former independent senator, former commissioner of the Equal Opportunities Commission, former educator and community development, education and arts advocate in Tobago. And before the presentation of the role of the committee, let me make the point that work is yet carded to take place in Tobago. It is scheduled. Its scheduled date has not arrived yet. Ms. Zaida Rajnath, veteran public servant, former permanent secretary in the Office of the Prime Minister, former deputy chairman, Public Services Commission. Mr. Kobe Sandy, research analyst, Ministry of Youth Development and National Service, youth development influencer, director at the Angostura Foundation, Alderman, Point Fortin Borough Corporation, and former Guild President at the UWI St. Augustine campus. Now to give a presentation on the role of the committee, and thank you so much for being here as well, committee members. Before we welcome those or your submissions to the consultation, we have a committee member, Mr. Lawrence R. June. Please welcome him.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rasta, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Now, after noting several calls for the removal of the Christopher Columbus statues, the Prime Minister and the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago acknowledged that the matter was of significant public interest and necessitated dialogue at the national level to consider the varied views that exist, and more so, that further research to develop recommendations that will facilitate the informed response to these calls. In September 2022, the Cabinet established the committee to review the placement of statues, monuments, and signage in Trinidad and Tobago. Now, in its deliberations, the committee considered the authority that lies with the regional corporations, the Tobago House of Assembly, various ministries, and several other entities noted in legislation with respect to erecting and removing statues and monuments, and the naming and renaming of streets. So from this, the committee ascertained that there was no common policy or process amongst the various entities to treat with these issues. As such, the committee established the terms of reference for its operations, approved by Cabinet, as follows. 1, to develop a policy for the placement and removal of statues, monuments, and signage in Trinidad and Tobago. And within that context of the policy, look at the treatment of statues and monuments that are to be removed and how the spaces they occupy will be utilized. And finally, within the context of the first 2 points, make recommendations to the government on how to treat with statues, monuments, and signage that are referenced throughout all of our consultations. Now, the definitions that we are using to guide our work are the definitions that are defined in legislation where they may exist. So monuments, as defined by the National Trust Act, are any buildings, structures, objects, or other works of man or of nature, or any part or remains thereof, which is of national importance by reason of its historic, architectural, traditional, artistic, aesthetic, or scientific interests. Now, statues, while not specifically defined, are considered under the broad category of monuments as defined in the National Trust. And while there is no direct definition of signage in the legislation, signage is referred to in multiple pieces of legislation as signboards or advertising devices. So what has this committee been doing since we were formed? Well, it's very important for us to ensure that the recommendations made on the placements of statues, monuments, and signage accurately represents our collective identity, our collective views, and our collective values as. For us, it is important that as many as possible be collected and reviewed through our work. So this is why we first sought to create space for key stakeholder groups who are connected with statues, monuments, and the signage via the legislation through their public work so that they can share their views, their experiences, their research, and their recommendations. And while this was ongoing, the committee also opened the call for written submissions so that the wider public could also contribute and share their views, experiences, and recommendations. And then today, we are here to hear your views, your experiences, and your expectations. To date, the committee has held meetings with representatives from 49 stakeholder groups across the country, and they are listed there for you to see. It is quite a long list, and I don't think anybody wants me to go through that list here today. We have also received over 170 written submissions for consideration to date, 127 via the online form, and 28 via email and hard copies. And I really want to stress this point, that for those who are interested in making the written submissions, please leverage the channels that are available. You can scan the QR code for those of you who are in the auditorium, or you can email committeeonmonuments@gov.tt. But coming back to the business of hand, today we are here to hear the views of the people of Trinidad and Tobago as they relate to statues, monuments, and signage in Trinidad and Tobago. In particular, we would like to hear your views on the following. 1, the removal or retention of specific statues or monuments in public spaces, particularly, but certainly not limited to, the Columbus statue. The actions that you think should be taken with statues or monuments to be removed from their current locations, and quite importantly as well, suggestions for new statues and monuments and signs in public spaces. We urge you to leverage this opportunity and to share with us. So on behalf of the committee, I want to thank everyone for your presence here today, and we look forward to hearing your views. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Arjun. Looking for views, experiences, and expectations. And while we are getting into that, moving towards getting your submissions, your contributions, we know that the Prime Minister would have raised the conversation about national identity, how it is we see ourselves represented. Just want to state from the outset that the coat of arms is defined as an emblem. So in terms of the parameters of this conversation, we are addressing statues and monuments. And signs, thank you. Also, we'll be trying to play nice, as it were, in terms of giving each other the opportunity to share our views, our contributions. If there is a view that you have that is longer, I know that the amount of contributions that have been submitted online and in hard copy, they've been speaking about, and we'll also share that information on how you can do so. But we want to start the ball rolling and welcome you to the floor in terms of giving your submissions, your contributions, your views, your experiences and expectations as they've been articulated. So we have 2 mics, 2 microphones, and I believe I was told that this is the one with better lighting, so it's being suggested that we have people come to this microphone, and none other than the mayor. You're going to start, because I believe you already had something to say along these lines of national identity. So naturally, we would ask you to give your name, the grouping that you represent, before you start with your contribution. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, DK, and good evening to the members of the committee and all of the persons who have chosen to put their foot forward, put their shoulder to the wheel, and contribute to national development. My name is Chinua Alain. I am the mayor of Port of Spain, and I represent all of the people of Port of Spain. We had an opportunity as a council to have a formal meeting with the committee where we made our views known. My colleague, Councillor Batiste, is here on behalf of the council, and a little bit later in the session, he will be sharing some of the thoughts of the council. I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank the committee for the diligent work that they've been doing. Thank the Honorable Prime Minister for establishing this committee. There's a conversation that has been ongoing long before I took office as the mayor of Port of Spain. It's a conversation that we need to continue to have. We need to be able to have a united approach to the changes that we may wish to see. I want you to know that you have the full support of the Council of the City of Port of Spain, and we look forward to continuing to support the work of the committee and do what we have to do in order to implement all of the recommendations in the shortest possible time. So thank you also very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Let me load.
Yes, please, looking for other contributions. We have one.
So, good afternoon. Can you hear me? I'm a little bit on the short side. This did not really work. Right. Can you all hear me better? Thank you. Sato Urikan, good evening. I am Roberta Bennett. I am a member of the Santa Rosa First Peoples community. As such, I bring greetings from them. We, the Santa Rosa First Peoples community, have no problem with the removal of the Christopher Columbus statues. However, we are saying that this must not be an action in isolation. So we remove it, and then what? Whether Columbus was famous, reputable, or notorious, the sculpture is a work of art that must be preserved. And such, we are stating that it should be placed in a museum. However, there must be a description of who he was and the impact of his encounter on the New World, particularly what's happening here in Trinidad and Tobago and what has happened with us. What will replace the Columbus statue, and what name will be given to the square that it came from? With the removal of the statue, will it open the discussion on our proposed indigenous monument on the site earmarked on the grounds of the Red House? One moment, please. Where we have the ancestral remains. So we're asking, now that we remove that, would this discussion allow for the consideration of an indigenous monument where there's a site already allocated for the site for a monument to be built where we have the ancestral remains? As it relates to signage, we also have no problem with changing the names of some streets that carry the names of persons who were notorious, not for good reasons. And as such, they were negative to our society. We are asking the question, in replacing these names, would consideration also be given to including the names of some of our chiefs of the indigenous First Peoples? In conclusion, I reiterate our thoughts about this position. How will the removal of the Statue of Columbus improve the lives of the First Peoples? Will the authorities pay more attention to the concerns on which we have already advocated? So we would like to see more discussion based on that and the inclusion of our identity as part of a national call. Thank you. Danki Bui. Thanks.
Thank you so much. All right, so we see that we have the questions up in no particular order. I believe we have a contribution coming.
Yeah, hi. Good afternoon. Okay, I will be responding as an artist and as a designer.
And sorry, just before you start, let me ask your name, please.
Dean Allen.
Great, so we have it on record.
Okay. Okay, so the whole policy of ours is deaccessioning is not a bad thing. So things run their course and removing them, and I agree with where do you place them? The museum, but the museum needs to be, everything that we're talking about here in removing an inter-educational program will have some kind of economy to sustain it properly. The country broke. So we have to understand everything we have to do have to be placed within the context of already existing infrastructure. So maybe our schools, maybe how do we look at the wider public museum? That is something that already exists within our urban landscape is a consideration. Spaces that already have educational programming. There's the Fort San Andreas Museum. It's falling apart, not being utilized properly. There are Citygate. How do we create spaces where we could re-educate and revitalize things that we want to shift and move around? Now, the thing about the second one on the idea of how do we, I know the removal, but I think also how do we make choices on what become monuments and what become public statues is something about a process, and it's about a social process and an investigation into the space of how do these things have progressed quite a bit. These things that we're talking here is very old school, and there's a modern contemporary position about how monuments can exist in spaces. One example will be if we're going to celebrate C.L.R. James, for example, do we build something for him, or do we already utilize an existing already in his home that exists in Tunapuna, right? Well, okay, but maybe how, so if we're going to celebrate V.S. Naipaul, how do we already utilize existing infrastructure that V.S. Naipaul exists around his energy and build within that context? Instead of these, so what we're building are actually living spaces, spaces that hold energy and people can go into and be educated about our heroes and our past. Suggestion for new statues and monuments. I will start with signage. Signage is something we don't have very proper because we don't understand design very well. I have a lot of colleagues. One of my colleagues was always saying that he would like to redo the whole of Trinidad and Tobago signage because it's about just getting it right within a design policy framework, from not only how you create street signs, but how do you label signage throughout a building. We don't have that very well. That is something about education and curriculum and a whole lot of other things about how do we train our designers. The idea of suggesting new statues and monuments, again, is a process. And I will use an example. If you go into spaces or communities and you ask people of what, and you really get into there, you will see that the heroes that we speak about may not be the heroes that we really, people want. It could be the mama and the papa who took care of the children and who took care of their community, and how people see, and how do we rethink those things? How do we, and deconstruct this whole concept of what heroship is about. And I think that is a conversation as about process and how we sit down in spaces to make things happen and bring it alive. And if I sit down in a community with several people, you will realize the things that will come out will not be necessarily a thing that you might put on a pedestal in a thing. It will be a more quantum living thing. And I think we have to really understand that idea of process. I sent in my submission. I tried to explain it in there, but I just wanted to, I think that is important, the process, to deconstruct this horror we have in the urban landscape. All right.
Thank you so much, sir. And if you were going to use that word as a key word in terms of process, thank you for contributing to the process in more than one way. Thank you, Mama Zakia.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Hello.
My name is Zakia Uzuma Wadada, and I am here to represent both the Emancipation Support Committee of Trinidad and Tobago and the National Committee on Reparations. I want to thank the government for seeing, after enough time, the importance of us having this important discussion. We, as the Emancipation Support Committee, and also representing the Caribbean Freedom Project, did have the opportunity to meet with the committee and to really have good conversation about the importance of our spaces and how they are represented. So I don't want to have a very long conversation, but I do think that as being here, it is necessary to say something. And I am also going to inform you that we have made a very substantial contribution to the committee, pages and pages. So because this is a very deep and important issue. It's an issue about how, after 62 years of independence and almost 50 years of republicanism, we continue to live in a space that reflects the ideals and the vision and the views of those who are our colonial masters. You know, so the process of decolonization is what we should be about. You know, we need to decolonize our space, even our emblems, everything that represents us needs to be decolonized so that we live in a space that is reflective of who we are now. When Spain and England and France, they owned this space, they named the streets after the persons who they believed to be important to them. They presented and lifted and built monuments to persons whom they believed were important to them. We, as citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, need to decide who are important to us. Whom do we want to see in our spaces? Who do we want our children to feel proud about? And it cannot be picked on. It cannot be Christopher Columbus. It cannot be George and Henry and whoever these people are. You know, when I'm finished, excuse me,
thank
sir,
you so much, sir, but you will get the opportunity
finished,
to make your contribution. And thank you, so we ask you to wait on that.
So let me make my contribution and you can make yours after, okay? With all due respect. I am rambling? With all due respect.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Thank you, Mama Zakia.
So we need to create...
No, sir.
We need to create a physical environment that is reflective of who we are, the persons of whom we are proud, and whom we want our children to emulate. That's what takes place. That's what development, that's what independence, and that's what republicanism is all about. We want to make specifically a call, particularly at the end of this decade for people of African descent, that the street, Oxford Street,
excuse me, please, sir. We'll ask you to one-stop that, because what it is you're doing right now, you are taking time away from the time that you would have on the microphone.
Exactly.
So with all due respect, thank you so much.
Yes.
Allow for the contribution to be made. Thank you.
Yes, so just one one comment. Yes, yeah, but I can't make a contribution over somebody else speaking.
DK, may I step in? May I step in here, please? Excuse me, please, ladies and gentlemen. Excuse me, please, sir. We are here as citizens of Trinidad and Tobago to hear the views of everyone respectfully. Respectfully. We will not continue this consultation down this path. I think we can take this as a lesson of where we do not want to go. And start again. Start again. Let's all take a breath and let's start again right here.
So I just want to conclude, excuse me, Laura, I'm going to conclude by saying that one of the real concerns that we have with respect to the renaming of streets, it is because this is a very long-standing battle. We know the battle for Christopher Columbus. I'm almost certain that that is going to be one, and he will be removed. There's no choice. It has to happen. But we are asking, yes, in this, the decade for people of African descent, and which ends in this year, that efforts be made by the Port of Spain City Corporation. Our mayor was just here. He's very conscious of this concern that we have, and that Oxford Street be renamed Kwame Ture Street. It is the street upon which he lives. He lived. His house is still there, marked so that people come to Trinidad to visit this house, to see where he lived. It's about time that we begin to uplift those who have made us proud internationally, those who have worked hard for the liberation of not only African people, but of humanity. And therefore, I really want to ask that we give due consideration in the shortest possible time to rename Oxford Street Kwame Ture Street. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mama Zakio. Please, sir, name your grouping.
Pleasant afternoon to all of the head people and all present here. My name is Ola Kela Masitungi, and I'm representing Akbo Itesiwaju Okun. I don't have plenty to say at this moment. I suspect we might be given more than one turn, and I don't know if we have a time frame as we address at each moment, right? So, because I don't want to overstay, but one of my questions is that, one, we are talking about removing statues, replacing them or raising new statues and or sites and or buildings. But we don't have a time frame as to, well, what the buildings we considering? Is it between those from 1800, those from 1900, those from 2020, to 20, wherever going up to? So I would like to know, where are we speaking about? One, I would also, in the current moment, I have a place that I can, or at least two places I can suggest that are important in terms of spiritual transformation in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. With reference to Cristobal Columbus, besides, I want to say that in my own understanding of life, there is things material and things non-material. Some people think that the non-material means spiritual, not necessary. But I'm saying that when we remove the Columbus statue, wheresoever we should decide to place it, we should dematerialize it. I hope people understand what I'm saying. There should be something that is done to dismiss that negative spirit and the connotations of that negative spirit as it's impacted on this land. Having then dematerialized it in that way, then if you want to put it in some other place, and I feel they should have a path, right? And therefore it will have to do these things. We may have to have a special committee that will determine some of these things, because I feel this set of people who are going to do that should be, in a sense, beyond the mundane power, so that they should bring judgment upon those people that, or things or ideas that we are removing. This is evil, and therefore we must contain it. But this was Christian paradigm, the things that are evil are not just left, so they are sent to a place where they are burnt to perhaps nothingness, right? In some Christian paradigms in this country. So that thing has to be confined, and perhaps what we could have is a square of the infamous. And I think because we need to remember them. While we are moving them, we need to remember what the person, the thing, or the situation represents, so that people will not walk that road no time again, right? So this is one of the things that I would have to say at the moment. If we have an opportunity to say more, I would say more. But I'm saying that there are at least 2 spaces in Trinidad and Tobago, because even as we speak here now, we are speaking on the basis that in this country, we operate on every creed and race has an equal place. You know, even currently, we are thinking about a few years, well, we have had bilingual signage in the country where Spanish is next in line to English, right? But I think that, you know, there is need now even for things like names and language being taught in Trinidad and Tobago that are either Al-Kibulani, Syrian, others in nature, that are respected in this country. I belong to a faith which is normally called the Orisha faith in Trinidad and Tobago. People call it by different names. But I am not sure that under normal protocols in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, that we are equally treated as others. And one of the things that people tend to give as an excuse is that, you all are not well organized. And today, I'm saying that the world has a thing called, when a person is disabled, you don't tell them walk up these steps. You present a ramp for them. Spiritually, emotionally, and socially, my group of people are disabled, and I await the ramps. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Even talking about how we would cut and clear energy of spaces, as well as doing it at this juncture. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, all. Good afternoon, committee. Good afternoon, chair, master of ceremonies. I'm Wendy Seeley, and I represent the Woodbrook Residents Committee. And I am presenting here on the Woodbrook community. Woodbrook, as many of you know, is a heritage community. This was sent in earlier by our colleague, Miguel Brown. I just wish to note that in Woodbrook, there are 38 streets. I think the mayor, he has left. 38 streets. But 16 of these streets are named after warlords from the Boer War in South Africa. They are British generals that fought in the Boer War in South Africa. And just let me give you a little brief background. The 38 streets, of course, fall into 3 broad categories. The Seagate family, as you know, were the last owners of the Woodbrook estate, and their children are named in Woodbrook: Anna, Petra, Carlos, Rosalino, etc. And then we have the British generals, the Kitchener, the Baden-Powells, the Bullers, Polkaroo, and the rest. But who are these British generals? They fought in what they call the Old Transvaal, the Free State, Natal, and Cape Colony. And significantly to note that when victory was won by the Boers in 1902, that carnival broke out in the streets of Port of Spain. Some 16 streets in Woodbrook are named after these British warlords. And what we are here to ask is whether some of these streets can be renamed. I don't know. You know, we have, in Woodbrook, we have something like 57 icons. We have the Ray Holmans, the Ellie Manets, we have Beryl McBurney, George Bailey, and I'm wondering whether, well, we, the committee, we are wondering whether consideration can be given to the renaming of some of these streets. We don't know how it would work, whether it is feasible at all, because much of Woodbrook properties are leasehold, and there are deeds that carry an address. So maybe some of these things would have to be worked out. But just that I wish to bring to the attention of the committee that since we are talking about things that represent us in this forum, I wish to put to the committee that consideration be given to renaming some of these streets, in particular these warlords from the Boer War of South Africa. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And as we have another contribution coming, we welcome committee member Kobe Nathan Stanley rather.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Shania James, and I represent the public. I'll keep it short and straightforward and simple. Having someone's likeness manifest as a statue is supposed to express some sort of pride and adoration for the object or person the monument is representing. Christopher Columbus was provided this privilege. It's disrespectful to those who were the victims of him, and it's a shame that his glorified statue still stands tall in our country. Due to his influence, the first people suffered tremendously, caused by the persecution from Columbus and his subordinates in the pursuit of greed and control. That is why having a statue that stands in his honor within our island is disrespectful and blatantly disgraceful and blatantly disrespectful towards the first people. With that being said, Christopher Columbus should not be immortalized by having a revered monument of any kind anywhere. The push for any caricature of him to be taken down should not cease. The actions should be taken with the statues or monuments of Christopher Columbus should be still put in a museum. He's still a historical figure, and his atrocities should not be forgotten. So any statues or figures of him should be placed in a museum. To replace his statue, a memorial display of the first people would be fair. They should be honored, not Columbus. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Alatash Gervan, and I represent the not-for-profit organization called Developing Art and Design Awareness, DADAN Projects. We made a contribution online, and it was submitted. We haven't received a response as yet, so I don't know if any feedback will be given. But our main contribution this evening would be in relation to the third item, which is suggestions for new statutes, monuments, and signage. In general, we find that there is an underrepresentation of women in the statutes that currently exist. And so we want to suggest perhaps that Pat Bishop, Denise Plummer, Beryl McBurney, and Audrey Jeffers receive statutes in their honor. And monuments as well. In addition, we also think that there are other significant individuals like Sir Isaac Hayatali, C.L.R. James, Lloyd Best, Ulrich Cross, Peter Minshall, Earl Lovelace. We have an extensive list. Carlisle Chang, Elmer Francois, Ellie Manette, and Harold Saldana. In relation to monuments, we think that there should be an Emancipation Monument, an Indian Arrival Day Monument, First Peoples Monument in Arima, a monument to the creation of the steel pan, perhaps, monument to Black Power movement and the March to Caroni, Americans Monument, Roxborough and Belle Manor Riots Monument, and a monument to the 1901 water riots that occurred. We also think that there should be historical signage. For example, the Lion House, signage for that, as well as the home of Ellie Manette and Harold Saldana. In relation to other suggestions that were really solicited, we think that an inventory of existing monuments and statues should be done just so that people can have a database to go to should they be interested in what exists. We also think that there should be a standing committee appointed by the president with fixed members from perhaps UE, Art Society representatives, Society of Architects representatives, tourism body representatives, and Ministry of Local Government. We also think that there should be a policy as it relates to signage and billboards, as we think that too many signs aren't maintained or they spoil the natural environment. Commercial signage, that is. And that is our contribution this evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Before you step off, just to confirm, the submission was made via email or the online form?
Online form.
Okay. So once you get the notice that it has been submitted, once you submit, then you can rest assured that we have received it.
Okay.
We will send an update to everyone after we've closed off the submissions.
Okay,
so
because I don't know if there's like feedback, if any clarification was needed, but okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon.
Yes,
to
sir.
the panel and to everybody. My name is Wayne Bertrand. I'm from the First People, member of the First People. I have been listening and I've been asking myself a lot of questions. And one of the biggest question is that why it is we have 14 corporations, and within those corporations, I believe that the purchasers within those corporations can come together and said what we would like for our corporations, because you see signage, memorials, and all those things that we would like to remove and replace with something else should be something as we are Trinidad and Tobagonians. We should be able to tell ourselves this is what we want. I appreciate what the young lady had said just now. She had said that she would like some of the known people who has done a lot for Trinidad and Tobago to be placed in certain, probably in murals, monuments, or even statues. Another important thing is that as a Trinidadian, I would really like to see a lot of murals being placed, because a lot of schools has been torn down, but we do have a history of the old schools. We do have a picture of them. We have nothing around in parks and different areas. So when children come to this school, this new school, what was there from the last school? Nothing was done, nothing was placed. I saw in Canada a lot of murals is placed in different areas when they take down buildings and everything else. And I think it is a fantastic thing for us to know our past history of what we had before. I'll speak on the First People now. In Arima, we need to have, as Chief Ricardo Barrett has always said, we need to have much more done for Arima, seeing that Arima, the Caribs and the Arawaks were the first people really in Trinidad and Tobago, not Christopher Columbus. But everybody, as is to say, Christopher Columbus discovered Trinidad, which we all know. He was just a pirate that came in and take over the Trinidad and Tobago, and then they had a lot of fighting with the English, whoever it is, but Trinidad and Tobago remain as Trinidad and Tobago, and we as Trinidadians and Tobagonians must be able to say something more for the first people of Arima and generate something even greater for them, because they have been trying, how many years? Many, many years now. And we haven't been getting the kind of support we need for Arima. It can be a tourism area too for the Trinidad and Tobago, as most of the corporations, because there are a lot of history in Trinidad. If we really look at it, and that history that we have in Trinidad, it could work out into a business, into the tourism sector, because all around Trinidad and Tobago, but we do not really show that up. We show other things that is not of Trinidad and Tobago. And we need to develop this part, I believe, in our country, and with what I'm seeing in this panel is very good. So we need to develop that and get things going in a much better way. I thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bertram. And while Mr. Victor makes his way to the microphone for his contribution, we thank you for the reminders and for the rest of us to put our phones on silent or vibrate, please. Thank you so much.
Rubadiri Victor, Artists Coalition of Trinidad and Tobago. This is an important moment. This is a moment of serious national contemplation where everybody is tuned in. It means that we are growing up as a people and we're actually getting to grips with the fundamentals of what it means to be a civilization and what are the protocols of settling, what are the protocols of entering into space and making the space ours. And so I think we need to all apprehend how significant the moment is and take it with all that, the seriousness of that. We are building a civilization consciously and learning how that is done. And through all the violence of the ways that we all came here, there's people who've been here 7,000 years, the oldest Kalinago, Warao, oldest settlement of human beings in this part of the world. The Banwari fossil, the Banwari woman or Banwari man fossil, which is at Yui. We are the oldest place. And so all of, and the violence that has happened here and to make us who we are. So it's an important moment that we are dealing with definitions. There are things that can guide us in these ruminations. There was a committee led by the late Dr. Brinsley Samaru for the 50th anniversary. I served on that committee. It was a committee that was establishing, looking at national heroes. And there was a nationwide consultation. That committee came up with a list of about 211 heroes, and there was a lot of work done in terms of inclusivity, in terms of balancing gender, ethnicity, all the different things that would, but the hammer fell on merit, and it was extremely rigorous. And there was a lot of integrity, and that exists. So I'll be sending that with my notes to you all. But that list of 211, and on that there were professors and all kinds of different people, and we were getting things from people from all over the country and diaspora, people we never knew about, Trinbagonians all over the planet. An incredible list. And of course, we had to choose just 50. And we felt that was a disservice to the nation because there's the normal 50 that people might know when, I ask Trinidadians. But from the 51st person, that's when it starts to get magical. Because that's when you start to say, wow, way. And there are 211. And since then, I could safely say there are probably about 40-something more. I think there are probably about 250, I could say, represent the best of us. So that exists, and that research exists. It's extensive, and those kinds of things. So I'll be sending that on to the committee. And as I said, there was nationwide and diaspora-wide consultation on that. I want to back up. So that would bring forward a lot of the things that the data movement people were saying in terms of the comprehensiveness of the people who are there to celebrate. Now, the thing is that Trinidad and Tobago, 1.5 million people, thereabouts, over 200 world records, over 200 world firsts, almost 20-something medals in the Olympics, Oscars, Emmys, Nobel Prizes, Bollywood Oscars, Grammys, Tonys, you name it. Trinbagonians are there. That phenomenal, there are subcontinents that don't have that kind of lineage of excellence and genius. We take it for granted. We get vexed. But nobody, the man comes, yeah, silver, yeah, gold. People have no medals. You know, there are places with 7,000 year history. They have one folk hero. We stumbling and tripping over heroes. The thing is that none of that genius is present in monuments, institutions, curriculum, media, and unfortunately the utterances of a lot of our leaders. It's not there. It's not there in policy, none of it. To have produced so much genius, and that lineage is nowhere present in the landscape. So that's an alarm. That's not the phone. Yeah. To have produced so much genius, and for it not to be present is a sin. And it's a sin that we are paying for by the boys, the lost boys, who are destroying us. They are the result of our failure to consecrate that genius and raise pathways and aspirational pathways out of the landscape. So what is required is an heritage policy and a heroes policy that identifies sites, spaces that where we can erect, whether it be heritage sites, monuments, different kinds of things, place names, placeholders. It will work with the National Trust. It will be a committee formed with artists and scholars and all the things, archaeologists and all the things and stuff are missing, that looks at how do we imprint those aspirational pathways into, let us dream ourselves into the landscape properly. And that's what the act that we are about right now is about. And that's the seriousness with which it is about. And it means, yes, what are the parts of evil? What are the parts of destruction? What are the parts that have marked failure? And that we can mark those parts as that, so that we never go down those paths. And what are the aspirational parts? And that's why people erect those things. That's why they erected Picton. That's why they erected Napoleon and Columbus and stuff, because they were interested in genocide. They were interested in murder and pillage and that kind of stuff, and these were the best men at it. And that's what they heralded. And they would have done all the other simidimi as priests, Orisha priests, like Olodare, Master Tunji. If you look at the post-Columbus, it's surrounded by demons. There are a whole set of Satans, right? Or they would have done whatever they would have done, right? So that's what they were about. Is that what we are about? No. So this is a question of what are we about? That is what we are doing. On the other turn, what Dean said is
a little short.
Closing. On the other turn, what Dean said is very important, which is the question of aesthetics. Right? It is not enough to replace things. It is not enough to say, we're going to construct a statue on Lara, and then you get some international firm that is create little penny things for inside of a bubblegum machine, and they are the ones who you commission to do your statue of Lara. The persons invested with creating monuments of masters. Barbados and Jamaica invested in that master artist. They sent them abroad and they trained them in monument sculpturing. It is the same sculpture that has sculpted the last 40 years of Jamaica's and Barbados sculptures. And people travel from all over the world to see those sculptures. Nobody's traveling over the world to see our Lara kitsch Sparrow, and all of those things, because they were not constructed by master sculptors. We have people like Kerry, we have young sculptors who have the granular talent. They need to be trained. Monumental sculpture is the person who is responsible for your civilization's mark. When we are all gone, that is what remains. That person is invested with the civilization's responsibility. And that's a question of aesthetics. And so, apart from all those other policies, this country needs a policy on design, on style. And we could see that with the proliferation of ugly that is everywhere in all public works and all of those different things, from pavements to signage to monuments. So I'm saying that all these things need to be done hand in hand. We have to recognize the last 20 years, final thing, the last 20 years has been the Renaissance internationally. And there have been incredible monuments, institutions, buildings, and stuff created all over the planet. In that time, we have been multiplying ugliness. People, those are trillion-dollar industries. People travel to see those things. We have to invest in beauty. And that is a process, and that is a policy, design, and all these things that can be learned. So those are the things I have to say. This is an important moment. This is about us asking who we are and what we are about. Let's do it right. Ashe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Victor. Looking at how we consecrate genius, better sitting at the feet of others to stand on their shoulders. Yes, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Chief Ricardo Barrett, distinguished guests, and Moruga, First People. Thank you all for being here. My name is Gerald Williams. I'm working as a tour guide for Trinidad and Tobago Tourist Board. I'm also a transport driver for my lovely First People from years now, 2005. What I'm experiencing here, it brings joy to my heart, because all the history in my mind that I have to relate to in cruise ship come and cruise ship go is more foreign, outside. And my land, I don't see much about own people. And it hurt me. Well, when I reached Arima, the tour, the chief them have proof. And I could take the people and say, this isn't. But when I'm coming down the road all the way to Port of Spain, it hurt my heart. And what you all are doing here, I am thanking you all with all my heart. Because I'm going to soon be rebooting my computer up here into new standard. And I will be proud to say this and that and point it out. Streets, monument, building. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, sir.
You know,
sorry,
the older
just
you get, I'll give my name this
All
one.
right.
The older
Thank
you
you.
get, you do learn things, you know. You do learn things. Your name is Frank Ferreira from Belmont. And my family...
Frank Ferrero
Frank
from
Ferreira,
Belmont.
F-E-R-R-E-I-R-E.
Thank you so much.
And my family, Portuguese. Madeira. And we own, over the years, rum shops in Cuba. So when I hear somebody talk about Stokely Carmichael and our father of the nation here, Dr. Eric Williams banned Stokely Carmichael from the country. Banned him totally. Did not want that individual who was around in 1969, 1970, up in his seats and created real problems. So you're making this man, Stokely Carmichael, a hero? Really? Really? I said, no, you can't make that man a hero because he was banned by the father of the nation. So Eric Williams, most likely, Dr. Eric Williams must be turning in his grave to see what you all could do to destroy Trinidad and Tobago. You come into the earliest inhabitants of Trinidad and Tobago. And I go through my history books, and I have a lot of books on Trinidad and Tobago, where they talk about the Arawaks and the Caribs and the Siboneyes. Now, I see you all dressed in all sorts of outfits and whatnot. The chief is there. Enlighten me and tell me if the Arawaks were peaceful people, if the Caribs were warlike, and if the Caribs used to kill the Arawaks and take away their women and so on, they committed murder. You are a murderous gang of people. And nobody would dispute that. Nobody would dispute that. But you. You're the chief. So that is common knowledge that the Caribs used to murder the Arawaks. And I learned that from school. And you promoting yourself as the chief and so on. And that is where I have the problem with you all. You want me to explain myself again? So you talk about Columbus with genocide and this and that and the other. Columbus was an ordinary individual who loved books, who discovered a like for seafaring activities, who frequented the sea, who made voyages and so on. He was an enterprising individual. He was born in Italy, Genoa, 1450, 1451. And he rediscovered Trinidad and Tobago on his third voyage. And you are saying here that a man spread all sorts of diseases outside there and corrupted all sorts of individuals, but basically the team around him in his voyages were prisoners, condemned men. So the whole environment at that time is not even applicable to today. You're looking at two different situations, and Columbus was a real individual. A real individual. And I take, you know what I mean, I take a total dislike of certain people saying that he spread genocide. You know what I mean? I just don't understand it. And I am asking here, I want the committee to take note and to sort of recognize that Columbus rediscovered Trinidad and Tobago, notwithstanding the early inhabitants that were here. But they had no sort of land settlement in that time. There was a crisscross, you know what I mean, the Caribbean and so on. But nobody placed a permanent land settlement than the Spanish. When the Spanish came here, they founded San Jose, St. Joseph. And they created the establishment and whatnot. So I'm not disputing the inhabitants, but I am disputing how they went about it. And Columbus himself, and we have to take note, he went on 4 voyages and so on. He discovered Trinidad, he rediscovered Trinidad in 1498. We have to recognize that. Somebody in all the other countries, somebody discovered the States. Somebody discovered other countries and so on. Vasco da Gama, you know what I mean? They all discovered. And they never had a problem in removing, you know what I mean, statues and names and all of that.
And while you're doing that, Mr. Ferreira, we thank you for your contribution.
No, I just want to make one more statement.
We ask you
one more statement.
Thank you so much.
I am glad for the opportunity that you all sit in there, right? But things have a tendency to change overnight. And possibly next year, right? Things going to change. And whatever policies and so on that you have here, and whatever programs could easily be replaced. All right? And if your intention, your direct intention, is to remove the statue, I am very, very sorry for Trinidad and Tobago. I'm very sorry. Because you'll find all the so-called criminals are not all those deceased individuals who contributed to Trinidad and Tobago over the years, and who contributed to Spain in particular. But you'll find this country would be a living hell sooner than later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ferreira. And there's a saying that history judges us all fairly, and we're very grateful for the contributions that are taking place now. Some of them are not the same, and that just makes us human. And there's a need for conflict. There's a need for conflict. Mommy have a saying that is only when breeze blow you see fall boom, see, right? So I think we have a little breeze coming. Hello, Madam Abeo.
Greetings, everyone. Before I begin and introduce myself, I just want to say a few names. I want to say the name of Kwame Ture. And since we are in the process of unlearning, I apologize in advance if I butcher the pronunciation of any of these. I want to say the names Taino, Kalinago, Nepoya, Sopuyo, and Yao. That being said, I will introduce myself. I am Abeo Jackson. I'm a 6th-generation American from the lineage of Amphi and Bashana Jackson. So I don't see Mama Kila here this evening, so I will presume to speak on behalf of my community. I am also a 4th-year PhD candidate in cultural studies, so I also want to say the name Dr. Suzanne Burke. Yes? How is this move in conversation with how we plan to educate and re-socialize our place and space? That's what I want to ask. Place being the geography, and space meaning that which we have created and will continue to create, and how those things impact each other. Because at first glance, it may feel as though what I'm asking is outside of the remit of the committee before us. But as we are well aware and joke about, is that we are a beautiful land of committees and commissions and other such time-consuming indulgences. But many times our conversations happen in silos, and as the elders say, we end up spinning top in mud. This is a conversation about uncolonization. And I'm not using the word decolonization because the word decolonization is embroiled in a lot of politics that is rooted in a lot of privilege and has been co-opted. So when I say uncolonization, I'm talking about the centering of ourselves. A conversation about veneration as well. Every time we say the names of perpetrators of violence, we relinquish our power and accede to purposeful amnesia. This is a conversation of reimagining ourselves as we would like to be. This is a conversation that requires us to trouble the idea of nation as it sits within an ongoing context of plantation hegemony and coloniality. It has to do with who is accepted and who is considered a transgressor to supposed respectability. It is a conversation that should refute the gaslighting of existing privilege that continues to benefit from legacies of violence brought by Columbus and those who came after him. that by removing these misplaced sites of veneration, we somehow erase history. When we stand as testimony to that history by our very ongoing lived experiences. Every trauma and resulting ability to transmute that pain into joy and beauty, that is the testimony and living archive of our history. We do not need the statues, we do not need the street names. We are the testimony to the survival. We absolutely cannot allow those who would seek to distract us from our work to win. Privilege might be the loudest in the room at times, but loud truly doesn't necessarily mean equitable or just. So yes, I absolutely want to see, for instance, various spaces and places that continue to venerate our American ancestors and communities. As our First People elder would have said earlier, absolutely yes, remove the statues. I am a little less precious about putting them in museums. I feel rapists and murderers and destroyers of peoples and civilizations deserve no space, but I'm me. So yes, renaming and removal, but then what? Are we going to have a national drive of re-education, both through the formalized education system that still sits within our colonial context, as well as re-education through how we curate our creative and cultural forms? So my question is, where does this movement, and it has to be a movement, fit into a wider conversation? Ashe.
Thank you very much, and thank you for talking about the fact that it's work and it's a process. And I guess Brother Cambon will also correct me if I'm wrong, in the sense that some people say it's no longer a luta continua, because when you struggle, you don't know who the victor is, right? But thank you so much, sir.
Pleasant good evening, members on the panel, members in the audience on my right and my left. United we stand, divided we fall. I'm 39 years old, and I observe that we are divided in Trinidad and Tobago geographically, based on ethnicity, based on politics, based on religion. And because of that, we haven't been able to achieve developed status since 1962. And by us being divided, it is allowing Western powers and also upcoming superpowers to take advantage of us. So I'm asking the members on the committee that we should all tread carefully on how we proceed in changing the names of streets and monuments, because yes, we want to correct history, but we do not want to create further division in the country. That is one. Two, we are focusing on colonial names and colonial monuments, but it have individuals who were not part of the colonial structures and said certain things. Do we only focus on the colonial names alone, or we take a look at everyone and ensure that the persons, the names and the monuments we are putting up are truly icons for Trinidad and Tobago? Three, I was watching a few years ago on TV with, I think it's Finding Your Ancestry, and they were looking at Ben Affleck's ancestry. And he discovered that his great-great-great-grandfather was a slave master with 25 slaves. And he told the presenter that he wanted to hide the information. So we have a challenge here. Yes, we want to remove the monuments because we don't want to give, I think as it would, credence to those individuals. But we don't want to remove those names to have them hidden in history where the citizens are unaware of the atrocities they committed. So I would recommend for the committee, if the government could bring policy in place where we could have a proper procedure to ensure that we analyze the names of streets and monuments so that whatever we put there, it represents something that represents Trinidad and Tobago. Inclusiveness. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Just before you leave the mic, though, we know your age, but we're not sure about your name.
Andre Akers.
All right. Thank you so
Yes.
much, Mr. Akers.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks to everybody who has spoken so far. I just wanted to quickly raise a few points. My name is Rhoda Reddock, and I'm also from the organization Data and Projects. My name is Rhoda Reddock, and on this occasion, I'm also representing the organization Data and Projects Developing Art and Design Awareness. I wanted to begin with the point that was made about continuity and sustainability, because things here tend to be very partisan, and sometimes when governments change, things disappear. I know, for example, under the NAR government, some people were declared national heroes, and then after that, you never heard about them again. Elmer Francois, for example, was one of them, and then I understood, sorry, that's no longer the issue. So how do we make this a truly national activity that everyone can feel part of and to ensure continuity and sustainability? I think that even though the committee has been asked to speak on some very specific, to respond to some specific themes, I think that there may be some larger issues that the committee may wish to include in its report. And I think, first of all, the whole issue of expanded historical and critical historical education, because I think that is one of the weakest points of our existence here in Trinidad and Tobago. Most of us do not know the majority of our history, and it's not our fault. We are not taught it in schools. The museums are really a challenge, so that our historical consciousness is weak. But we constantly make what we think are historical statements, which are often incorrect. I think that the whole question between heritage and education, and heritage and the economy, I really want, because I think our tourism people never think of heritage. I hardly ever see anything related to heritage. And in terms of Trinidad and Tobago, Rubidiri said, has had a number of very important citizens. People come here to look for them, and they don't find them. There were some Japanese panists who went to the cemetery to look for Bradley's grave. It was covered in bush. They cleaned it up, and they were horrified because they couldn't understand how we could allow this grave of such an important national musician to be ignored. Similarly, Ngugi Wat the Younger came here and wanted to visit C.L.R. James' grave. That particular occasion, someone had to cut the bush to get, and he gave us a lecture. It was at the last Carrie Festa. Therefore, I think that in terms of monuments, we don't always need a statue. There are other ways of memorializing and recognizing. So I want to suggest that monuments could be usable spaces. For example, the breakfast shed, what's left of it, which was the idea of Audrey Jeffers, a social worker, the first female member of the Trinidad and Tobago City Council, Legislative Council, the first woman elected to the Port au Prince City Council. We managed to snatch what was left of the breakfast shed when the Hyatt was going up now. It's a shadow of itself. It's a mess. How can that breakfast shed be made into a monument to the work of Audrey Jeffers? The penny bank was recently handed over to the Carnival Museum. That's great. But what about the penny bank itself? That was a historical, it was the first locally owned bank. It was a cooperative bank of ordinary people who took their pennies there. I said, if even Pat goes to the Carnival Museum, where is the heritage of that penny bank? You know, we speak about finance, etc., but where is that history? And so I think that making living monuments are usable spaces, spaces where students, visitors, people can actually feel the presence of the person. I think that's very, very important. I know my time is short, and so I'll just end here to give others a chance. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Redder. And teachers have this amazing ability to take a point that may have been shared by someone else and then reframe it so you look at it and say, oh, okay. But yes, please, ma'am.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Teresa Hope. I'm representing myself. Okay? No organization. Here, every creed and race find an equal place. Have to remember, we all came here, well, and I'm saying all, I do not mean the first people who were here before. Christopher discovered for the Europeans the West Indies. And through him, the rest of us are all here. Good, bad, or indifferent, it is a history. The emotional responses is not going to help us. We need to know our history, and too many of us do not know our history. I very recently, as a Trinidadian, and again to point out, Trinidad's history is different from Tobago history. And there's lots of information about Tobago history. Google for Trinidad. You see Carnival. And that is it. And while there is a reason behind that, the 200 years plus of Spanish rule, when we were forgotten, left our own devices with a population of how much? 60 people and all kind of, 60, right? And through the works of certain people, whose name I will not pronounce, Ralph, Laurent, what? The French came and brought slaves. Trinidad has about 45 years of actual slavery. And we all had to work together. And I'm speaking specifically of Trinidad, not Tobago. Right? Tobago was changing hands and fighting down, and one set of tribe was it was the Taínos helping other people, and Tobago history is a whole thing by itself. Right? But we here, we need to know our own, and we don't. I recently started doing tours in Port of Spain. I love my capital. And I was taking people around. And it is amazing to me what we do not know. So that if we want to have a conversation about removing Columbus statue, history is history. You have to learn from it. Removing him to, as somebody suggests, putting him in another square, you might as well leave him there. Okay? We need to understand why we are at where we are. Everybody contributed. And removing and the defiling, and he was a rapist. We all have a part to play. Everybody, be it Portuguese, Italian, Spanish, African, what not. We all came together and made Trinidad and Tobago. So we have to use all of the history we have and then sit down and have a proper discussion. Okay, based on that, so is the case. We've now moved here, we can do X or Y. And that is not what I hear happening. I'm getting emotional fight down on who was this. It's not going to help us. Right? If we are going to go down that road, if he was a rapist and he was that, everything will get knocked down. Eventually, and you're going back to north. You are therefore undermining the very fabric of what you're supposed to be building. And we don't need that now. We do not need that now. Even in terms of Picton. The Picton, for me, he operated in a time when Somebody said years ago, and I think it was Dr. Eric Williams, Trinidad could be ungovernable. You need a strong, hard person to govern. Check the history. Picton operated under Spanish rule, Spanish laws, which was different. So you have to put everything in a context before you decide X or Y and moving forward. And if you're going to remove them for that, then we could start off with Woodford. Woodford was actually racist. He did not support black people, but look at how much good he did. Look at how much good he did rebuilding Port of Spain. So you have to be able to weigh. We have to sit down as people and be able to weigh what is going on. The monuments, until we start, and I blame, yes, you can blame the Ministry of Education, Culture, Tourism, a whole set of things. That we do not know the history. It's not in the school books and there's a fight down and who what. But you also have to blame yourself as a collective, us. Because we do not talk about who we consider to be heroes. We're waiting for the government to do it. Okay? On this store, I'm on the promenade, and I ask children, what is this called? And a lovely child, Brian Lara Promenade. I said, good. He's a Jamaican. I said, what? This is what is out there because we as Trinidadians are not imprinting ourselves on our children. And if that goes on, we will be lost, and we're seeing the effects. You're hearing all the dub, the who, and the whatnot. Nothing that says Trinidadian. And we are pulling from everywhere else because we are afraid of our own greatness. I am one that I'm not, so I talk. Okay? We do not treat the monuments that we have. We're talking about having signage and whatnot. There is a sign in Port of Spain that is over 200 years old. On the wall, one side is King Street, I'm telling you, and the other one is Abercrombie Street, erected in 1812. There were weeds growing up in the wall that holds it, and it's going to fall if that is allowed to go on. When you go into, and I don't know if the mayor is still here, City Hall, that lovely plaque done by Carly Chang, who, oh my God. And you look at it and you realize, but it's not being properly maintained. Okay? You know, Christopher Columbus statue, for all people talk and nobody goes into the square, that statue is white and kept clean. I don't know how because you don't see people in there. Cipriani's statue so green and black you can't even make out his face, and he's right on the roundabout. And he's a national hero. So it is something with us that we do not appreciate. Look at the condition. After $6 million was spent 20, 30 years ago, to change the promenade, and it became Brian Lara Promenade. Look at the condition it is in. And we are all good with it, because we do not appreciate ourselves. So that if we want to have new statues and new monuments and everything, I have no problem with that, you know. But if we do not invest in maintaining it and having a love, the cenotaph, that a lot of money was spent 5 years ago or 6 years ago to fix it and bring it back to the correct color. And I walked in and I was so upset. I said, I'm writing the mayor, I'm writing the prime minister, I am writing everybody. Because the goodly people wrote all over the cenotaph in Memorial Park. And if that's something so basic that you would take your time to leave to come with a marker and deface something that says Trinidadians who died to ensure that the world stayed safe in World War I and World War II. And you so don't care, or you don't know, but then we will pick up and go outside and complain, oh, but we don't have that in Trinidad, and why we don't do this? It starts with us. So if we want this to move beyond a nice, artistic, airy, intellectual discussion, then there needs to be a permanent committee, and I agree, a few other people said it. There needs to be a committee that takes charge of ensuring that the signs, the monuments, everything is kept at a specific level. Right? Yes, the aesthetics, it needs to be kept at a specific level. It needs so that the gentleman who spoke about the tour. And I understand that, but I just sat down home and Googled and got information, and because I happen to love the information and the little that I got, and I could understand it, I started to walk about, and I have gotten people to go with me, and they're like, really? This happened here? And we have a tendency, whenever we don't agree with something, it mysteriously has a fire. So a lot of our history has been lost because we have a fire, and this burned down, and this gone, and that's how we deal with things. We need to come out of that. We are all here. We've all come here. We all have to be represented. And I cannot stand up and mash you down because I was ill-treated. My ancestors was ill-treated. My ancestors were ill-treated. Guess what? I here. Them survive and I survive. And we will keep on moving. Okay? So that, just in closing, we need a committee, a proper committee. This is all well and good, but I hope going forward that we have a standardized committee with proper reference so that our history, whenever we decide to come up with, we're changing this for that and who what, it's done properly, not ad hoc. All right? Because, again, we have statutes and things here about people that, I mean, there's a history to everybody, good, bad, and indifferent. We need to be able to wait. And people need to know. Young people need to know. Everybody needs to know, and that is not happening right now. So I think on that note, I will hush. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hope. They say Hope is the last thing to go, but we still have other contributions. Also reminding you, if you want to email, you can send your contributions to committeeonmonuments@gov.tt, and hard copy submissions can be made or sent to the Office of the Prime Minister in St. Clair, the Cabinet-appointed committee to review the placement of statues, monuments, and signage in Trinidad and Tobago, Office of the Prime Minister, 13 to 15 St. Clair Avenue, St. Clair, Port of Spain. Yes, ma'am.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Denisa David. Like Abeyo, I am American, and I represent my well-intentioned ancestors and myself. I am part of an organization called Project Namescapes, and one of the things that we wanted to raise, point 3, is the education around spaces like Orange Grove, Paradise, Champlain, Dinsley, in Tobago, Lambo, Lowlands, Honest-Vale, Calder Hall, those spaces that were plantations, the education and the renaming of those spaces. I would share a story very briefly to support some of the points that were made before. Some years ago, my brother was at a stadium going in to look at a football match, and there was a lot of jostling and arguing, pushing, people cursing, and at one point he turned to his side and he realized that people were pushing this man. The man was Hazley Crawford, at the stadium named after him, in his honor. I raise that to support the point of education, particularly for young people, that we might imagine co-creating curricula with young people so that there's utility for them, so that they can imagine themselves great, remembering their greatness as an extension of the resilience and strength of those who came before them, not idolizing these heroes because they were very human, but honoring their strengths and remembering their stories. I quite like the idea of one of the elders who spoke before of dismantling and possibly crushing some of these statues into dust and placing them on the ground so that we can walk on them. We can walk on them. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon to Dr. Pemberton and members of the committee, fellow Trinidad and Trinbagonians. Good afternoon. I am Councillor Clint Baptiste. I'm representing the Port of Spain City Council. So I've been given this task this afternoon by the mayor and my fellow council members to basically first offer our support to the cabinet appointed committee as it relates to the matter at caption. For some time, we've been faced with various petitions and suggestions that would have been submitted to the council over the years from various stakeholders. So in our current incarnation, the council has sought to tackle these issues by the way of an advisory committee, chaired by myself, Councillor Batiste, and comprising of prospective stakeholders such as the National Trust, representation from the First Peoples, Emancipation Support Committee, just to name a few. This committee, being a brainchild of our current mayor, was approved to discuss a few matters that required urgent attention as per the growing public discourse. Surrounding one, the Columbus statue, or Columbus Square. We've had suggestions to rename the square National Heroes Square. There was even a suggestion to rename it Colonization Square. And place within that space various other monuments and signage that would speak of our colonized past. There's been suggestions to rename Woodford Square, Picton Street, even the entire community of Picton. Suggestions came to rename Mahatma Gandhi Square, to remove the Mahatma Gandhi statue, and as well as for the installation of the steel pan on the city's seal, being that the steel pan was birthed in the city of Port of Spain. So it's for this reason that we, as a city, we welcome this committee's review, with particular interest to those statues and monuments and signage that reside within the city in our capital. We await the final recommendations. We will be submitting recommendations as well as a council. On a personal level, I would have heard suggestions for the removal of the Columbus statue. Some persons would have said incinerate it. Some would have said let's crush it up and walk on it. I had the opportunity to visit Elmina Castle in Ghana. And what struck me at the time, the tour guide would have told us, he said the reason why Elmina Castle still stands is to signal to humanity or to mankind that atrocities did take place there. And it must be there and it must remain to remind humanity where we should never return. So do we remove this dark time in our history, or do we use it as a stepping stone for what I see as a troubled generation now? Do we use it as an incentive to give them an idea as to what we came from and where do we want to go? You know, so I just wanted to end by that and saying we need to be careful about how we go about this exercise, but what I would like to encourage is that we take this opportunity to have the real conversations that could be respectful and all-inclusive, but there must be real conversations, because at the end of the day, we have a past, but we also have a future, and we have to be the ones that will create that pathway to the future in which we want to realize. So I thank you for the opportunity, and I wish the committee well in its future endeavors.
Thank you very much, Councillor Batiste. I want to take the opportunity to say that we have about 10 minutes more for the live section of contributions. Even after the live stream is ended, we will still have a grace period to continue with this exercise of the creative imagination, as Professor Nettleford would call an exercise like this. Please, sir.
I would like to greet you all in one of our indigenous languages, which is closest to what we have in Trinidad, which is the Waro language. Ya Karibiara, Kokotuka, and Jakira, which means blessings and greetings to all of you and all goodness to you. And your response to me should be Jakira.
Jakira.
Good. As Grand Chief of the First Peoples Sovereign Nations in Trinidad and Tobago, I'm Eric Lewis, representing some of the South, and we also have established and establishing office in the city of Port of Spain, retracing our ancestral tracks. Could we have a round of applause, please? I'm not happy enough to see so many empty seats here. Shame on us Trinidadians. I left Maruga a long time ago to get up here today, in the same day, with my family, with my son here today. I know my presence here has to do with not just with myself being here today as an individual. I'm not here to give my own individualistic or ideologies, but that which would represent my ancestors from hundreds of years ago and thousands of years ago who would have settled each and every part of this country and the Caribbean and the Americas. That's why I am here. Secondly, I'm here today to represent the generation that is to come. If we think about that, then we'd understand some of the comments that people made here, disrespecting our brothers and sisters here, disrespecting our indigenous community, and praising the atrocities. That's the education of their time. In 10 years' time, where would they be? In 20 years' time, where will they be? Think about it. So what we are gifted, we are all gifted here today to represent our ancestors past, those who are present here today, and those who are coming in the future. Let's do the best we can. Don't you all agree? Good. All right, I'm not here to make everybody happy, so time to ruffle some feathers. I'm not wearing mine this evening, but let's begin. Inclusion of the First Peoples community to be added to the calendar of national holidays in Trinidad and Tobago. I would like to have that noted. We are the First Peoples representing our ancestors. Yes, I'm of mixed descent today, which I'm very, very happy and proud of to be of mixed descent. I have relatives in this room who go right back to all the ancient times. Right here and right here. Good. You could see our mixer. That is number one. Secondly, the renaming of Woodford Square. So thanks to the council member that is present here today, and I hope to see you afterwards. So on Woodford Square, we had where some uprising and some fights had taken place hundreds of years ago, which the colonial powers massacred our indigenous people, possibly on that same ground, soil of Woodford Square. And that history, as we say, it's not preached, it's not spoken about. All we know, most of what we know is that the indigenous people settled in Arima. They settled in Port of Spain more. Also, throughout Port of Spain, in the south of the island, in Maruga, where I came from, we have found several Amerindian archaeological sites and villages. And for a little more introduction, I'm also an archaeological researcher and founder of the Maruga Museum, founder of the National Cocoa and Chocolate Museum. I'm also the holder of the archives of Maruga, right? So I have some good records, which gives testament to all of that. And when I'm speaking, I'm not angry, I'm speaking out of love and passion. To rename it in honor of one of our great chief, Karupu or Karupano, Karupo. It is one of the chiefs who was fought and killed in that vicinity. And look at where the Red House bones were unearthed, right? Or it could just be renamed Kasike Square or Chief Square. But there is no reason why we should even need that fountain there anyway. So while the fountain is there, it can also be removed, and an Amerindian statue, sculpted statue of this chief could be placed there in that vicinity. I'm in total agreement of the removal of the Columbus statue in Port of Spain, and another Amerindian statue can go there because we have had several chiefs and chieftesses fighting for the liberation and the freedom of our indigenous people, which are unwritten, not unwritten, which the history of it is not promoted enough in our country. right? Secondly, brace yourselves, people, the renaming of the city of Port of Spain. Laugh as much as you want. I'm young here today. Be careful what the future will hold, because we'll be here still, according to the natural order of things. Port of Spain, there's no reason under the sun that the city that our ancestors inhabited should be called the Port of Spain. Go to Spain and tell them your city is called the Port of Spain. They're appalled. They are appalled. I have people coming from all over the world, and they say, how is it I have to fly into the Port of Spain and then go to the Caribbean? Make it make sense. We're in 2024. Many countries around the world have already changed their cities' names, their capitals. Nicaragua has moved from their old city to their new city. We're still in our old city. State of mind. Renaming of the Columbus Channel to the Orinoco Channel. Could that please be noted? Renaming of the Columbus Channel to the Orinoco Channel, and that would have to be taken to the laws of the sea. Or, in some cases, we could have parallel naming or renaming. So, while in the meantime, you all be deciding whatever, and we'd rather decide. That Port of Spain is number one, that should go. Parallel name it. Yeah? And the next thing, if we change in the coat of arms, people, we have the 3 ships of Columbus. What the helm of the Queen still doing on top of the coat of arms? The late Queen, deceased. So please let us put her to rest and remove the helm of our coat of arms. And well, we don't talk about the Columbus getting enough attention. So let's give some attention to our indigenous people, our African people. And by the way, just one correction, the African enslavement was for over 200 years, right? And the indigenous enslavement was also for a very long time, which was also parallel at some time. So let's also do some work on educating and re-educating. I repeat that. And please, people, before you come up and say nonsense here, do your research. Because it's very, 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 very offensive. That's the most offensive thing when you hear people say things like that. I don't want to repeat it. All right, so God bless you all. Chakera ya karibiara kokotuka. Chakera.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lewis. And that actually ends the live stream of this event. We continue to have submissions, we continue to have contributions, but this ends the live part, or the broadcast rather. It will actually continue live online, television broadcast. It ends now, and as we said, the live stream continues until 7:30. We have a hard stop to this consultation, and also reminding you that parkade closes at 8 p.m., so drunk or sober, mind your business, depending on where your vehicle is parked. And also, last but not least, letting you know that we have refreshments outside in the lobby before you leave, thanking you for your physical presence. Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, DK and Head Table. I am Jovan Roberts, Deputy Mayor of Arima, and today I'm here representing the Council of Arima. And I know that we would have exhausted. Well, first, before I say that, personally, let me just say I'm very proud of everyone here today, given the outburst that took place earlier, and we remain disciplined. We were tolerant in some countries that consider themselves first world, and example societies that may have had violence breaking out with such difference in opinions in the same room, especially at heated topics like this. So I'm very proud of each of us here today. Now, I will be speaking specifically to Arima and how these topics affect Arima. And I know that with somebody like Chief Ricardo Barrett on the committee, the views of how Christopher Columbus affected the First Peoples would very well be represented. And with the other contributions, I think we have fully exhausted point 1 and 2 as to how we may be able to treat. I may not say fully exhausted, but we have well gone into that. So I'll deal with Point number 3, the suggestions for new statues, monuments, and signage. Now, one of the things that Arima is most famous for is our roots and connection to the first people. And that is because we have done a very well job in preserving that culture and that heritage and making sure that we celebrate it. And Chief, I'd like to just publicly acknowledge your efforts in that right now. For quite some time, you have advocated for the First Peoples community and the preservation of what it is to be a First People, and to make sure that the people of today and the generations of tomorrow will understand what would have happened and the cultures and what it means to be First People, right? Now, a place should reflect the signage, the monuments, and the statues in any place should reflect the heritage of that space. So what we would like to see is that as we are most known, there are other cultural icons, sporting icons that come from Arima, but we are most known for our First Peoples heritage, so that street names should reflect such, monuments should reflect such, so that when visitors, tourists, come to a place like Arima, they understand where they are, not just geographically, but historically as well. And the weight of the significance of why we name certain things, those names, and what it means to the people will be felt. It would have more gravity if it is all centered in a cohesive manner, that we align ourselves with who we are. Having that in mind, though, if we were to go about changing street names, we have a few street names that are not connected to Arima: King Street, Prince Street, Queen Street, Woodford Street, and we have a list. If we were to actually start to make changes to these street names, what would happen is some confusion will take place. So this is something for the committee to take note of. We changed one street name recently, to Lord Kitchener Avenue. Pro Queen Street was changed to Lord Kitchener Avenue, and still have people confused to this day. That could have been a year or two ago as to where Lord Kitchener Avenue is. And if we were to make such changes drastically, so I'm not saying don't change, but if we change too fast, it may distort persons' sense of geographical location as to where they are and where they need to be. And also there's implications for persons who may reside or businesses that operate on these streets. They have to go through a process of change as well. So we should take that into consideration. Additionally, this is an excellent process. I believe that it's something that should be distributed to the wider public. We are now in a time where everybody accesses everything on their phone. We have become a little bit lazy, so persons may not venture to find a consultation such like this. So we may have to find, even though it's online, we may also have to go to some communities to seek their input. Because if we're talking about changing, these such changes can't be done whenever we feel like it or every Monday morning. So a lot more consultation through the local government bodies as well, the municipal corporations. We can engage the persons with committees such as this so that we could find as many people and get as many opinions as possible, so that we have something that represents the most amount of people in our societies. And because we are time stricken, I think I will conclude there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just to remind and to validate the point of the mountain sometimes having to engage with Mohammed, it's 49 physical visitations to interact with stakeholders that would have taken place, right? All right, thank you so much. Well, so far, with more to continue. Yes, please, sir.
Good evening, all.
Good evening.
My name is Terence Innes. I'm here to represent the Port of Spain Central Lions Club. And our contribution is a short one, and it's to do with an existing monument which we want to remove and put back in a prominent place. I say this because one of your earlier speakers said there is no monument for the steel band. And what about the local works of the local artists? Well, I'm here to tell you, 53 years ago, the then mayor of Port of Spain, Mr. Fitz Blackman, commissioned a work from the late Patrick Chufun, a very talented local artist, and he constructed a monument to the steel band. I suspect strongly that the local authorities don't even know that it exists, because a speaker earlier on spoke about having a monument to the steel band. If my memory serves me right, I think this monument was so prominent that it even was put on a local stamp, postage stamp, way back. And that is when the monument was positioned on the western end of what is now the Brian Lara Promenade. It was moved some time ago, and it is where somehow no one knows it's there. It is even further east of the Columbus statue, on the far end of the what we could call the Brian Lara Promenade, behind the cathedral. No one even knows that it was moved, and no one even knows that really beautiful monument exists. I say this, I suspect that the local pan movement don't even know of it. Obviously, this administration, because here we are in Steel Band Month, where the steel band has now been made the national instrument, and there's been no focus whatever on this beautiful monument. And for those of you who don't know that it exists, I would ask you to, well, I know that part of Port of Spain now is perhaps could be considered a war zone. You might not want to go, but it's further down near Nelson Street, behind some comedian said they have now put it behind the cathedral, so it's behind God back. That is what it is. So this is what I am here to talk to the committee about existing monuments that are not given the prominence that it should be. They removed that statue when they were doing some work down East Port of Spain, where they wanted to revive East Port of Spain. And they put the statue down that way. And it's been there, and everybody has forgotten it. Occasionally, the Lions Club, where we have a dignitary coming to Trinidad, we would have a little ceremony where wreaths would be placed at the statue in honor of the pioneers of the steel pan. What is the connection with the Lions Club? When Mr. Blackman, the Honorable Fitz Blackman, wanted to commission the statue, the cost at that time was $4,000. He approached three organizations, and said that he asked for $1,000 each, and that he would put $1,000 out of the mayor's fund. My Lions Club decided when they got that information that we would pay all, and this I tell you, this is why we have, people would say, our navel string buried there. And we still feel proud of having made that contribution to this country. And for those, I heard someone say that they should bring in a foreign sculptor. I'd ask them to go and look at that sculpture and see how beautiful it is. Our own homegrown Patrick Chufun, who did that sculpture. And it's still standing there, proud for everybody to see it. On my own behalf, I would just like to back up what a previous speaker said as far as Woodbrook is concerned. Those, she called them warlords, but they were English generals. And they're all basically, doing the research, they were all practically failures. They probably got their commissions as generals through contact and they nearly lost the Boer War. Had it not been for the Australian troops that came in, they would have lost the English would have lost the Boer War, relying on those generals. And there's even one general, I'll not call his name, even in his own country, they have taken down the statue of that general that we proudly have his name up in Woodbrook. And George Bailey, who came out of Buller Street, Buller was another general himself, is not honored in the same area. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I saw a lot of people taking out things and writing down the information. Let me just ask, and I believe it was you, Mr. Victor, as opposed to saying, okay, well, getting people from outside, is building capacity that we have in-house to create some of those. All right, okay. Thank you very much. So just in terms of like going forward with what it is people said and what it is we meant. But thank you very much, sir, for your contribution.
Hi. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Augustine Chin, and I am a part of his organization, the chief. So my contribution here is to let you know that this year I have 50 years as a Ryerson graduate, and that money was paid through government. So I want to contribute what the government spent on me. So besides that, when I returned here, I worked in 13 different ministries, including Ministry of Tourism. I was the first person to work in tourism with a PS, the secretary, and I. That was the Ministry of Tourism. So that's why I want to contribute to tourism. And that was also one of my specialties in my training. And the other thing, when I worked here, I worked in over 13 different ministries, including local government. So I have a very good idea of all over the country, all over the different corporations and all that. So I think I could contribute a lot to this project you all have here. That's my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your service, sir.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Hello.
Feeling nervous. I'm in this room with all these big, important people. My name is Dennis McNichols. I came from San Fernando. I represent myself, and now I'm in town. I don't know which ancestry I am attached to. I don't know where my great-grandparents came from. My grandfather used to cut cane, and my great-grandfather from Scotland, so I don't know. But in this discussion, I think it's really important for us to stop trying to make this thing tribal. I hear a lot of people saying, well, what about the Tassa? And we could play this on this instrument. But we have to remember that the key in this here is about what is indigenous to us. The indigenous people, the ships are not indigenous, whether the pan is indigenous, our heroes that we should have should also be indigenous. And one of the arguments we always hear is, well, we had to be grateful that this man bring us here because we had to be here suffering, as if the motherlands don't have people who are wealthy as well, as if the motherlands are not suffering as a direct result of the colonialism that passed through there and exploited them as they did us. So I think it's really important for us, and I have a little bit of notes. I'm just trying not to be too rambly all over the place. I think it's really important for us to kind of recognize this as not just erasing history, because you can't erase history. It happened. It's recorded. It's in a book somewhere. But what we need to not do is not memorialize these people. We need to not have kids passing by and saying, who is this man? Why he get a statue? And we need to have our people who have contributed really to building this country and helping us become independent and helping us go forward and be here and not depend on the powers that be and the masses and whomever to keep us alive. And really and truly, at the end of it, is a matter of national pride. So when we talk about why is it that we don't respect the statues and the monuments of our local people, it's because we don't respect ourselves. Because if we stay here and we make music and we do art, nobody cares about us until we go in Canada and study and come back. And we're doing the same thing, just as well, but now we have a degree from some white university. And until we change that mindset, we will never really and truly respect ourselves. And that begins with getting rid of some of these statues. And that's my contribution. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. McNichols.
Good evening, all.
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Committee and all. My name is Brian Serrett. I've been involved in steel band for almost all of my life. And I come here today not to represent Panchenbego, but to represent, firstly, a friend of mine who passed away, Mr. Esmond King, and some of you, and myself, and some of the ancestors, the leaders in steel bands of long ago. I want to suggest to the committee that something that myself and Esmond had discussed before he passed, and that is that what is the address of all those steel bands that started the whole movement of steel band? Where are they from? Does anyone know? I heard earlier someone talking about doing tours and not knowing what happened here and what happened there. So part of the discussion, and I want to bring it to the committee, of myself and Esmond, apart from which, some years ago, Port of Spain was declared a music city by UNESCO. Right? And I tried at the time to have a conversation with the mayor about it. But I think we should begin with Port of Spain, which we know and acknowledge as the birthplace of Pan, that every site where a panyard was started, that it be recognized and marked, that a design be made and a mark be placed wherever to show that the steel band was there. And also, if I may include modern technology, that a QR code be placed there so that anyone going there, they can get the entire history of the particular band and those persons who were involved with the band. Of course, it would require some historical research. And as we all know, history is his story, so some people give all sorts of agendas when they give in history. But I would like us to consider finding every panyard that there was in the first instance in Port of Spain, and then we can go into San Fernando and Arima and wherever else. Let us start the project in Port of Spain, design a particular sign with the QR code, and that be part of our. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thank you for also representing Mr. Esmond, because you speaking about that is almost as though I'm seeing him next to you and both of you all presenting your contribution. So thank you very much.
Sorry to be back here, but I was asked by a friend to raise a point, which I think is very important. It probably has no relevance to this, but he was calling for the name of the airport to remain Piarco. He said Piarco is the only airport remaining in the region with an indigenous name. I think Temeri was probably the last one, so he just wanted to make that name. And I just wanted to mention one of our advantages of our late plantation history is the survival of indigenous names, First Peoples names of towns, etc. So I'm thinking that maybe the historical signage explaining Aruka from the indigenous word so-and-so and the meaning of the word, that would also help us all to become part of our own society.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Just to build on that quick point, can you hear me? Oh, my name. I'm Melissa Medford. I'm representing myself. First of all, I want to say thank you very much to the committee for opening this forum and just making this option available for people to voice their opinions. I think we all agree that we are a beautiful people of a beautiful nation, and there is a sense of want lacking that we can contribute to And these kinds of conversations, or starting these kinds of conversations, or enabling these kinds of conversations, is a progressive move to getting us there. So thank you very much for opening this forum. I agree with a lot of the salient points that have already been expressed on this evening's forum. So again, it's been very wholesome to be a part of just being present and listen and hear. I would like to stress just a few of them. One is really, really decoupling from the political agenda in this effort. Two is really, really decoupling national identity from personal identity, because there is a difference. Three is in the committee's forward work and what they take from all of this that has been said and has been contributed through writing and that will continue to be contributed, that some very clear criteria be established. This is really to point number 2. Actions that should be taken with statues or monuments. A very clear list or identification of criteria by which these decisions can be made, so that it can outlive the persons on the committee, that it can, again, from the point of view of sustainability, it can take us forward without the individuals who are necessarily involved, because again, it's a policy, it's a document that is collectively contributed to and collectively built by ourselves of this nation, independent of the politics and the personalities and the independent, what's the word? I wouldn't say destructive, because everybody has a right to their own opinion, but the non-constructive distractions that take us away from the core of being a nation that has something to be proud of, that really understands what that is and really understands the basis of national pride. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Medford. And it makes me want to intone the name Kwame Ture again, because he talks about the difference between mobilization, where we do a thing and it feels nice, and organization, where there is something tangible and, as he said, living, breathing. It speaks to the process of doing such. One of the things that I like to talk about when I have conversations with people is timelines, next steps. So in terms of giving an idea of some of those things, in addition to the vote of thanks, we have Chair Dr. Rita Pemberton.
Good evening, everyone. We have had quite a session this afternoon, into evening. We have been fed a range of viewpoints, information, which adds to our work, gives us more work to do, but provides us with the basis to really formulate some recommendations that truly reflect the views of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and particularly those of you who came who represented groups, those groups who came and sat with us, and those who submitted online and dropped hard copies at the office and so on. So we do have our work now cut out for us. So I would like to thank everyone for coming and sharing and helping the committee to advance its work. We've had community groups, we have religious groups, we have members from state organizations, we have the parliamentary group there who are making sure that we have a record of everything. So I'm just relaying the sentiments of the committee, that we are indeed very grateful for you taking the time to come and sharing with us on what we consider to be a very important exercise. Our business is not finished. We still have time, and those persons who have any additional information that they would like us to have could do so. That would be right up until we have the last public session, and that would be in Tobago. Well, we have to determine the date still. So if you have more to say, feel free to contribute. We welcome all submissions, we welcome all views, and really that we want a wide scope of views and bits of information, and so much that we have gathered some new stuff that has come out today. So again, I would like to thank everyone, members of my committee, the support we got from the Office of the Prime Minister, OPMC, from the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Governments, and from all of you people here. We also had assistance from the councils, city councils, city corporations. Thank you all very much. So we have refreshments outside, and you will be hearing from us. Thanks again.
Thank you much. My original place of worship, we say bye-bye about 8, 9 times. We're not going to do that today. Once again, just reminding you in terms of order of business, if you are at the parkade, that closes at 8 p.m., so please organize your business while saying thanks and having conversations outside of the space, even though we are leaving from here now. Thank you so much. Have a blessed one.